Welcome to Learn English with Story and Conversation.
Story 1.
Echoes of the Past. Sarah moved into the old Victorian house, unaware of its dark history. Every night, she heard footsteps echoing down the hallway, but when she checked, no one was there. One evening, she found an old, dust-covered diary in the attic. The entries spoke of a woman who was murdered in the house, her body never found. As Sarah read, she felt a cold breath on her neck, but when she turned, she was alone. The last entry in the diary was dated that very day, in handwriting identical to hers. Panicked, she tried to leave, but the door wouldn't budge. The windows were suddenly nailed shut, and the walls seemed to close in. She heard the footsteps again, louder and closer this time. The last thing she saw was a shadowy figure emerging from the wall, grinning.
Story 2.
The Whispering Darkness. Tom had always been afraid of the dark, but tonight, he felt an overwhelming sense of terror as the lights went out. He heard a faint whisper, calling his name from the corner of the room. With trembling hands, he reached for his phone to use the flashlight, but it slipped from his grasp and shattered on the floor. The whisper grew louder, now right next to his ear, sending chills down his spine. Desperate, he scrambled to find the door, but the room seemed to stretch endlessly in every direction. Something cold and clammy brushed against his arm, and he froze in place. The voice whispered again, "You're not alone," and a second pair of icy hands grabbed him from behind. He tried to scream, but no sound escaped his lips. The darkness enveloped him completely as the unseen presence pulled him into the shadows. The next morning, his room was empty, the only trace of him being the broken phone on the floor.
Story 3.
The doll's claim. Ella loved visiting her grandmother's house, with its charming old-world feel and the comforting smell of fresh-baked cookies. One day, while exploring the attic, she discovered a hidden room filled with dusty, forgotten toys. Among them was an antique doll with glassy blue eyes that seemed to follow her every move. That night, Ella woke up to the sound of soft footsteps in her room. The doll was sitting on her nightstand, though she distinctly remembered leaving it in the attic. The next day, the doll appeared in different places around the house, always closer to where Ella was. Her grandmother claimed to know nothing about it, but her voice trembled as she spoke. On the third night, Ella awoke to find the doll in her bed, its cold fingers wrapped around her wrist. The last thing she heard was its tiny voice whispering, "You're mine now."
Story 4.
The Lost Path. Mark was hiking deep in the woods when he came across an abandoned campsite. The tents were torn, and there were signs of a struggle, but no people in sight. As he searched for clues, he found a journal half buried in the dirt. The last entry described something lurking in the woods, watching, waiting for the right moment to strike. Just then, the sun began to set, casting long, eerie shadows between the trees. Mark decided to leave, but the path he came from had vanished, replaced by a thick fog. The hairs on the back of his neck stood up as he heard rustling in the bushes, followed by a low growl. He started running, but the sound of footsteps, heavy, deliberate, matched his pace. The growl grew louder, and before he could scream, something massive knocked him to the ground. The journal lay forgotten in the dirt as the fog swallowed him whole. Thanks for watching my video. Please subscribe my channel and press the bell icon.